Creation, Book of Portals, Chapter 7. When she wasn't organizing a dinner party or art classes, she spent most of her days either in the technology ward or in the experimental labs. Technology, while seemingly abundant, was actually a finite resource in Narleo. Though many different Narlip groups were sent out on excavation and retrieval missions, it never seemed to be enough for the leaders in the civilization. They didn't even have the Narlean equivalent to presidents or royalty there. They just had what they referred to as oracles. They weren't necessarily spiritual guides in the human sense of the word, but they did provide direction, a vision for the society to adhere to. Under an oracle's direction, she was assigned to help develop certain technologies and transform them into new forms of equipment. She quickly noticed the Narlips hated waste, so they were often recycling and reusing everything. Old communications devices became tools to dig, weapons became building structures, and tactical gear became engine parts. She had gotten quite good at repurposing the technologies, often coming up with blueprints in her head before finding a new sketchbook to plan out the designs. She liked the time spent planning, building, and deconstructing. Creation and destruction. It challenged her to think in new ways. Unlike in her astronaut training, she was finally able to use her creative mind for something. Her inventions helped to improve life on Narleo, though it already felt like paradise. She never wanted for anything. She had seemingly open access to whatever she required in her home, and she had free reign in the lab, within reason, of course. Still, she felt as if she were contributing to something exciting, and admittedly, it did make her happy. She felt like her work was important. 13 human months after her arrival, she developed a spherical device that produced hollow food. She realized the old way of asking K1 to project a cooking video and food was time-consuming and complicated. The device simplified things so everyone would have the ability to choose the foods they wanted to experience. It was called a food globe. It even replicated the texture of food in their mouth so they could truly feel as if they were eating it. She had been so ecstatic to share that new invention on their feast night. She was thanked profusely by the other humans, and once the devices became ready to replicate, even some of the Narlips wanted to take a few to their homes in the tunnels. Hito was the first in line to do so. Since their interaction a few months ago where Hito pointed at her drawing, the Great Luminary, and then the watch, she hadn't had the chance to ask about it. But she thought about it often, pondering what Hito was referring to. It was as if every time she wanted to inquire further, listening minds were always near. So instead, she tried to focus on her task while the moment still lingered in her curiosity. Another device she developed was the chrysanthem, a light tube. She noticed before that the Narlips will use a large rectangular machine to siphon an orb of light from the Great Luminary, before using their clawed hands to hold onto it as they guided themselves through the tunnels. She realized it was needed after noticing burn marks on the hands of the younger Narlips. The older Narlips had a thickened skin that grew over the scars with time. To combat this issue, she developed the chrysanthem, a tube that when powered on, it would magnetize a bulb of light from the luminary, and once enough light was collected, it would hold onto the light orb like a torch. Once the light was done being used, there was a switch to send the orb back to the Great Luminary from wherever they were located on the planet. Her invention helped to solve the burn issues that the Narlips had, and aided in maintaining the light source. As a new engineer, she would also teach the Narlips about the technologies of humankind. She taught them about cellular devices, music streaming, Netflix, artificial intelligence, high-speed trains, and hovercars. Well, she added in the hovercart bit as a joke, but they took her seriously. Many of them would never visit Earth to verify anyway. But as she educated them, they grew to like her. She was even respected. She knew the importance of going back home, but she had to admit that something had changed within her. Her original goal was to gain their trust, but they had also gained hers as well. She was even happy when she lied down in her bed at night. It was a bed made of mutricin, a fluffy, cotton-like material growing in abundance on the planet. She often saw younger Narlips collecting bundles of mutricin and sprinkling the fluff around on the ground. It looked a lot like snow. In her home, the Narlips also allowed her a wardrobe in case she wanted to expand upon her fashion, and a ring projector that displayed a TV screen in case she wanted to be entertained while she stayed at home. Her home wasn't like a human home, though. It was more like a loft, square-shaped with no room for a kitchen or bathroom. It wasn't as if she needed either, though, so she wasn't complaining. It was efficient and useful, and the other humans' abodes were exactly the same. She had even gotten used to the natural lizard-like forms of the Narlips, and when sometimes they changed forms to more frightening creatures, it eventually no longer made her skin crawl. And though difficult at first, she even started to understand their humor. So when they brought in the broken Portalis device, she was genuinely excited to help, not because it was a possible ticket back to her old home, but because she wanted to contribute to the well-being of her new home. Her objective this time was different. Instead of reusing the material to create a new invention, the oracles wanted her to improve upon the design. They wanted her to make a portal device that was stronger and more efficient. To help, they brought in the Narlip with a force-friendly voice. She learned its name was Kaidos. When she first arrived, Kaidos was an expedition leader of sorts. But within the time that she had been there, Kaidos had been promoted to conductor of communications. From her understanding, it liked its new position better. This was what it had been studying for anyway, as it was the developer of the current wristband that the Narlips use. Kaidos seemed to be the most knowledgeable when it came to new Narlip technology. Picking her up from home, Kaidos accompanied her to the experimentation lab. Its tone almost sounded genuinely friendly when it greeted her. Kaidos opened a portal that transported them inside the technology building. It guided her past the room she'd usually reinvent in and opened a circular portal in a wall that led her into a brand new room. The labs she was in previously were bland, sterile, still rooms with plain carbon tables and chairs. This new lab was vibrant and much larger, the size of a school cafeteria. One side of the room was divided up into sections where Narlips were practicing creating portals. There were no other humans in sight. She watched as the Narlips twisted their wrists casting portals on their wall. One portal opened up to an engine room, while another one opened into deep space where a small asteroid flew through the portal to hit the Narlip in the head. It was quickly closed. Suddenly, from the corner where she had entered with Kaidos, a portal opened and a Narlip quickly entered. It was Hito. It seemed frantic, scared. Through the same portal it entered followed another Narlip dressed in tactical gear. She usually only saw those Narlips when they were about to embark on a new expedition. Hito's voice was squealing and panicked.
Give me another chance to make it right.
It pleaded at the Narlip wearing tactical gear, who swiftly caught up to Hito. The tactical Narlip grabbed onto Hito's wrist. Her eyes grew wide in concern. Hito had become almost like a friend, even though it didn't talk much. It mostly liked to gesture and project images into the mind. She wondered why Hito was suddenly being captured. Right as that thought entered her head, Hito locked eyes with her, and an image appeared in her mind. The image was one of the Great Luminary. She suddenly remembered the gesture Hito made months ago, pointing from her drawing to the luminary to the wristband and back at her. Could that be why? But that was so long ago.
Please!
Hito squealed, trying to escape the grasp of the larger Narlip.
I'll do anything!
From the corner of her eye, she saw Kaidos flick its wrist. Instantly, the language changed to unintelligible squeals. She wondered if this was their native language. She could tell Hito was still trying to plead its case because the squeals grew louder and more alert as it fought against the larger Narlip. Then, Kaido flicked its wrist again, and the sound from Hito's voice completely cut out. Silence. However, Hito continued to gesture frantically. The tactical Narlip lifted Hito into the air with one arm. It used its other arm to quickly snatch the Portalee's wristband from Hito's arm before flicking its wrist to project a portal onto the wall. This portal opened onto a planet where fire and bombs were ruthlessly raining from the sky. Hito began to kick violently, using its clawed feet to dig into the tactical Narlip's gear. The tactical Narlip never let go. Instead, it swiftly approached the opening of the portal. The next few seconds happened quickly. She saw the tactical Narlip pull its raised arm back, bringing Hito along with it. Then it thrust its arm forward, throwing the captured Narlip into the portal. For the last time, Hito locked eyes with her for a moment, and suddenly those eyes felt like a stark warning. This could happen to anyone. The tactical Narlip closed the portal as the now exiled Hito flew through the portal and landed onto the surface of the war-torn planet. The portal closed instantly, leaving no chance for Hito to escape back through it. Hito would now have to face the consequences of its own actions. She was horrified. She knew exactly what it felt like to be abandoned with no way to save yourself. But what did Hito do? She wondered to herself, unable to slow down her thoughts. Surely that gesture couldn't have been the reason. Why would they wait so long to punish? And why was its voice silent? From her periphery, she noticed Kaidos was watching her, intently. She noticed the directions her thoughts were headed in, and like she had been practicing, she curated them. I'm sure Hito deserved it, she thought calmly, interrupting her previous thought pattern. It must have violated a rule. After a long, quiet pause, Kaidos continued walking in the direction they were originally headed. Recovering from what she had witnessed, she followed. Kaidos led her to an empty section. As they sat down at the carbon table, Kaidos nodded at a nearby Narlip who approached with a cart. She suddenly got the strange feeling that she had just been tested. Redirecting her attention to the cart, she saw it was filled with various items: wires, hollow screens, projector orbs, screwdrivers, needles, and an assortment of other items and tools. Kaidos thanked the Narlip before sending it away. Using its own wristband, Kaidos opened a small portal and put its arm through. From the portal, Kaidos pulled out a box. After flicking its wrist to close off the portal, Kaidos then opened the box. Inside, it was the broken Portalee's wristband. At first look, she wasn't able to tell what was wrong. But upon further inspection, she noticed a cracked screen and a twisted band. They seemed indestructible, so she briefly wondered what happened to cause the damage.
The Narlip who wore the band was attacked,
Kaido said plainly. No emotion, but somehow still friendly.
After deliberately ignoring direct orders, Piv put its life at risk fighting an animalistic extraterrestrial creature. It devoured Piv almost completely. All that was left was a mangled wrist.
That's brutal. I'm sorry. Kaidos didn't say anything for a while, examining the wristband. Then, a soft,
Thank you. Piv was my offspring.
She knew Narlips procreated, but she didn't know Kaitos did. Still, she said something. I don't know your pain exactly, but my mother had given birth to a stillborn before she had me. I was supposed to have a brother. Sometimes, I wonder what it would have been like to have known him. Kaidos responded simply.
Piv was difficult.
We all are, she responded. It was full of meaning. There was a moment of silence between them, as if Kaitos appreciated what was said. She wasn't sure exactly why, but she could tell the perception Kaitos had of her had shifted in that moment. She didn't know if it was better or worse now, though. Changing the subject, Kaito flicked its wrist to display a screen in front of them. The screen showed a diagram of a wristband.
This is a blueprint for the Portales version 86252E. After scanning the impaired equipment, I found that these areas had irreparable damage.
The Narlip switched screens to show a diagram that highlighted the broken areas of the wristband.
Currently, the wristband does work. However, it no longer provides a clear jump from one area to another. For instance,
Kaitos removed its wristband, still displaying the diagram screen, and placed the broken band in its spot. The Narlip stood up to demonstrate.
If I were to cast a portal on this wall, I'm expecting it to lead deep into the catacombs of Bolnavia. Instead,
Kaitos flicked its wrist. A portal opened on the wall. She saw nothing but fire behind the opening of the portal. She felt the heat emanating from it. Kaitos continued.
The portal opens to the center of the sun in the Firaton galaxy. Which one? I do not know. They have too many suns.
Kaitos tried to close the portal by turning its wrist, but the portal flickered and grew wider. As the Narlip occupied itself with trying to close the portal, she gazed at the opening in amazement. She had never seen so many flames as she did in that moment. Of course, she had seen pictures and videos of the Earth's sun, and even in her short expedition in space, she could stare at it and wonder. But it was nothing like the detail she had been able to witness firsthand. She marveled at it, the light from the flames illuminating the room around her. Kaitos removed the broken band, replacing it with the correctly functioning one. After clearing the previous screen, Kaitos flicked his wrist at the portal, which closed immediately.
To further explain the malfunction, many of its other features, communication, hollow display, and temperature regulation, were also severely damaged.
Kaitos handed the band to her.
I invented it, but with the work you have provided on our other technologies, the Oracles decided to give you an opportunity to develop a better version.
Why didn't they ask you to? You seem to like doing this.
I aim to learn more than anything else, and I have tried. I wanted Portales version 86252E to be perfect, and I succeeded, until now. So I'm curious to know if, as a human, your perfect supersedes or fails in comparison to mine.
Okay, she responded directly, meeting Kaitos' gaze. Well, in order to know how to fix it, I need to know how it works. Kaitos allowed her to practice with an older model wristband. Opening a portal wasn't as easy as it looked. Though it looked like all Kaitos did was flick a wrist, she learned there was a lot more that went into it. First, she had to clear her mind. That was easy enough. However, Kaitos stressed to her that clearing her mind involved more than just emptying her thoughts. Clearing her mind meant complete and total surrender to the flow of the cosmos. That was the hard part. Of course, in her training to be an astronaut, she learned about space and the cosmos, but that was from a scientific point of view. Kaitos meant surrendering in a more spiritual, trusting sense, and that was not something she was used to. Her and her family's background had always been science, facts, math, and proof. But that didn't matter now. The facts never told her about the existence of an entirely different universe. Then, Kaitos briefly explained to her about the existence of auras. It told her about how every living being had an aura and an energy field, regardless of DNA makeup. That was easy enough to understand. But then, Kaido said that in order to project the portal, she would have to open her mind to the cosmos, focus on the location she wanted to portal to, then guide her auric energy from her roots and into her heart in order to give life to the image in her head. From there, the energy she gathered would shoot out her arm and into the wristband, connecting to it. Kaido's told her it should be easy for her, as humans had a better connection to their heart spaces than most other creatures they came in contact with. But she didn't understand what was meant by that. In her experience, Earth seemed more led by the mind than the heart, anyway. She struggled a bit with the first few steps, and Kaido's firmly coached her through them, as proper understanding of the procedure would be the difference between opening a portal to her intended world and opening one straight to human hell. The image of the fiery portal from before flashed through her mind. As beautiful as it was, she wanted to avoid that. The step she struggled with the most was connecting the image to the heart space, the place where Kaido's told her creation became energy for pure intent to manifest. In order to securely form a connection to the heart, she had to make sure she was grounded at her root. Kaido's would guide her through movement exercises meant to stabilize her energy field. Then, she'd pull energy from the base of her spine up through her sacral chakra, where she would feel a burning sensation flowing from beneath her navel. From there, she pulled the energy to just above her stomach, where her solar plexus was located. This provided the focus and the power for her intention. Then, from the solar plexus, the energy was pulled into her heart space. From there, she introduced the vision of the destination, but again, she fell flat. The energy fizzled out of the heart before it could travel down her arm. A feeling of emptiness was amplified in her chest. For reasons she didn't want to think about, she found it hard to focus on a place she wanted to open a portal to. Sometimes, if the Narlips were going to a new, previously undiscovered location, they'd simply focus on the qualities they wanted to experience. But the one quality that she'd most want to experience was the one she couldn't allow herself the luxury to indulge in. Without warning, a deep yearning for home sprouted in her as she was given instructions. She sighed, forcing the feeling away before it formed into a thought. Kaido showed her the last step. After sending out the intent from her heart, she was supposed to quickly flick her wrist to the right to project a portal. So she ran through the steps, one after the other. She'd rushed through step 1 before stumbling through the others and prematurely flicking her wrist at the last. Instead of making portals, she created sparks in the air, projected a few food dishes, set off an alarm, and hollow-called a random Narlip who was sleeping. This happened time after time. Each of her attempts to make a portal was met with instant failure. She collapsed to the floor in frustration. She felt like a disaster waiting to happen. Each time she flicked a wrist, a new disappointment emerged. She didn't understand what was blocking her from creating the portal. She was trying so hard. Nothing would give. Why was it so? She had an idea. She stood back up. In the stories he'd relay about alien civilizations, her uncle always tried to appeal to the side of her that longed for a purpose. He witnessed the devastating aftermath of her being denied art classes, and he would then try to spark her imagination with his stories. Her tantrums at her parents for being unfair would turn into her being excited to share in the stories her uncle would make up. He would tell her that as much as people sought for meaning and even the absence of meaning in their life, purpose always existed in the same place: the heart. He didn't realize it, but her uncle said everything she needed to hear. So, instead of following the rules the Narlips gave exactly, she decided to connect to the cosmos in another way. She imagined an alternate version of herself, one that instead of pursuing a career at NASA, decided to express herself through art. She envisioned herself drawing, then standing at an easel with a collection of acrylic paints. As she did this, her once emptied heart space warmed with an energy surging from her root upward to fill the space in her chest. As the energy flowed down through her arm, instead of flicking her wrist, she drew a circle in the air. The tip of her index finger sparked as a light flowed down from the wristband. As she finished drawing the circle in the air, an image appeared in the freshly made portal in front of her. A pale blue sky with the orange sun setting, shining brightly behind a home. The house was cozy, a Victorian-style 2-story home situated on 5 green acres of land. The curtains were drawn on the black frame windows for privacy, but she could tell that just beyond the tan fabric, a light was on. There was a car in the driveway, a blue Jeep with a line of colorful rubber ducks behind the windshield. A light flicked on the porch, illuminating the red front door. She could feel the breeze coming from the portal, a gust of air she couldn't fully experience with the Yanura on. She was taken aback for a moment as tears came to her eyes. It was her home, her breeze, her lawn, her windows, her curtains, her driveway, her Jeeps, her ducks, her porch light, her front door. She knew her parents would be just on the other side of the walls, getting ready to eat their dinner and watch their shows. She knew they'd have something from her room to comfort them, a pillow, a blanket, a shirt that still carried her scent. Grief spread through her, menacing and cruel. She should be there with them. Tell them she's okay. She should show them she's still alive. Before another thought could form, she slowly closed the portal by diagonally swiping through it. She stood in silence at the stillness. No more breeze. No more sun. No more grass. No more life. She hadn't meant to open a portal to her home. She had simply been intending to open a portal to a place where she could feel like she belonged. But she was happy her method worked. She did it. She opened her first portal. Without making eye contact with Kaidos, who had been silent and watching intently, she quickly removed the wristband and handed it over. Kaidos didn't say anything, but she knew she just passed another test.
Heart prevails where science could never compare.
She responded to Kaidos' statement with a simple nod. Hello, this is Michaela Simone Mack, author and writer of Creation, Book of Portals. Thank you so much for tuning in to the second season. I'm very excited to share this story with you. As always, every episode is coming out on Friday, so please stay tuned for next week. I would be greatly appreciative if you continue to listen, and also if you left comments about what you think about the story, and also if you shared it with your friends. Thank you so much. Have a great day. I'll speak to you again next Friday. Bye-bye.